Hey, I'm about ready to start our tallow soap making, and I'm going to go ahead and bring you along with me. We are going to be using about a quart and maybe like a half a pint of tallow. I'll definitely make sure that I give you our recipe, but that is what we're going to go ahead and do. Now, tallow is perfect for soap making and candle making because it is a harder fat. However, because it is a harder fat, we'll definitely want to make sure that we're melting it down prior to measuring it out. Otherwise, you're going to have a really hard time and you're going to be sitting for a long time scraping this out. So I'm going to go ahead and put it into a pot and kind of do a double broiler and melt it down, and then I'll go ahead and measure it. This recipe is going to be perfect for one of these soap molds. My soap molds came with 2 of them in there, but so if you're going to use 2, go ahead and double the recipe, or if you're going to do multiple, just make sure that you're adjusting the recipe accordingly. But for today, we're going to go ahead and use just one of these. We are starting off with the rings from the top of our jars and a couple other ones, and we're just going to go ahead and dump the water into our pot and put these on top, this so that our glass doesn't break as it heats up. So this is going to go ahead and melt down while I measure everything out. We're going to go ahead and use distilled water for this. I'm going to go ahead and measure out the sodium hydroxide as well, and the water and the sodium hydroxide will just sit off to the side. I'm not going to mix it until all of the oil is melted down and then cooled off to about 115 degrees. While that's heating up on the burner, I figured I'd come outside and explain a couple things that you want to make sure that you have on hand in order to do this safely. Something that you want to take note of is you might want to make sure that you are learning this process before getting your children involved. Because there's lye involved, you definitely want to make sure that you're taking all the precautions that you need and just kind of keeping them safe. So we're going to be using goggles and gloves because you can get a chemical burn with the lye. Once it's poured into the water, it is then very caustic, and so you can actually get burned. So that's a really important thing. I always come outside when I'm doing this. You can definitely go inside, but you want to make sure that you have a window open or some sort of ventilation going. I just play it safe and come out here to our back deck because it's right off of our kitchen, and it's super convenient for me to just go ahead and mix up the lye and then bring it in to pour it in with the oil. Another thing that you want to make sure that you have on hand is a scale. Something that's going to be super accurate because you want to make sure that all of your measurements are correct. You can definitely do this by hand, but it's going to take forever. So you want to make sure that you have an immersion blender on hand to do this. Even with the immersion blender, it takes me quite a bit of time for the soap to come to trace. And so this is key to soap making. Once the tallow is all melted down, we're going to go ahead and measure that out. We're looking for 1,000 grams here, so go ahead and zero out your scale and measure that out in your bowl. We're going to set this off to the side, and we're measuring out our sodium hydroxide now. We're combining it with our water, and now we're just going to go ahead and pour it right into our fat. This reaction here is called saponification. This is the consistency so far, but it needs to continue coming up to trace. And so I'm going to continue blending it, and by putting a little bit of essential oils in, it'll bring it up to trace even faster. You go ahead and pour it into your mold and make sure that you get every drop because you've worked hard for this. Next, just go ahead and evenly spread out all of your soap into your mold. I'm covering it up with some parchment paper, and this is going to sit in our cold garage for just about 22 to 24 hours. After this time, you can go ahead and peel it out of your mold. We have a crinkle cutter to cut it, but you can definitely go ahead and just use a knife. This is going to cure on our drying rack for about 4 to 6 weeks prior to use. We hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.